Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to welcome you here for this afternoon session on mentorship and peer-to-peer projects for at-risk and refugee academics and students. Can you hear me now better? Yeah, okay. I already hear the echo. You tell me when it's becoming too loud. My name is Florian Kohstall. I'm heading a program that is called Welcome at FU Berlin, that is preparing students to integrate the university here at Freie Universität Berlin. And together with the Arab-German Young Academy for Science and Humanities, I have also initiated a project that was called initially Adopt an Academic, that is now called Academics in Solidarity. That is a peer-to-peer mentoring program for refugee and at-risk scholars to help them to integrate a new academic environment. For me, it's a great pleasure to chair this session about different mentoring programs for at-risk and refugee academics. I think we have three eminent guests and scholars here on board who will present their different initiatives, and I will shortly introduce them briefly. What makes for me this session particularly interesting is actually that what we can learn from this session, that how at-risk scholars themselves become change makers in initiating new projects and initiatives, not only in education but also in research in their new university or host environment. And a second point that is probably more already a question to the panel is also, is the title really right if we think only about projects for at-risk and refugee academics? Are these projects not of a more general interest, not only for the at-risk and refugee academics, but for academics in general? So also those who are already present in the different universities, and how we can actually bridge sort of this gap. We all have discussed, I think, at numerous occasions already during this interesting conference, that the at-risk label is sort of a label that is sort of temporary, yeah, and that a process of normalization is what we should really aim to. So among our speakers today are Dr. Anas Khabour. He was actually for 2 years a SAR scholar in archaeology at the University of Gothenburg, and he's now a curator of the Middle East collection at the Swedish State's Museum for World Culture. He's going to present to us today a project on a database to document the losses of cultural heritage in Syria and Iraq. The second speaker, just beside me on my right, is Dr. Tuba İnal Çekiç. She is a researcher in urban planning, currently involved in a ERC grant project at the Hafen City University of Hamburg. She is also, initially I would say, an at-risk scholar, and she is one of the initiators of a project called Off University that is based here in Berlin. The third speaker is Dr. Djemila Carron. She is a senior lecturer in law at the University of Geneva, and she is collaborating or working now at a project called InZone in Switzerland that is providing access to higher education in refugee camps. Okay, all of you, I think it would be great if you would keep the presentations short. I guess you have a lot to say about your different projects, but if you can keep it to 7 to 10 minutes, that would be great, so that we have time for discussion afterwards. Okay, Dr. Anas, you would have the floor as the first speaker. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to present the proposed project to the documentation and the assessment of the, thank you very much, the damaged archaeological sites in the conflict zone in Syria and in Iraq. So I would like to start with this phrase. We humans have the tendency of no learn from the past. So, and those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. We have from the Middle East, from that region, previous experiences. We have the Syrian, the Lebanese civil war between 75 to 90, and the fall of Baghdad in 2003, and the negative consequences of this war on the cultural heritage. So we repeated the same thing in Syria, and a huge quantity of archaeological sites in Syria were destroyed or looted by different participants of the conflict, libraries, religious places, for example, in Raqqa, and that increased, especially when the people obtained metal detectors, obtained heavy machines to run their excavations. And the worst thing happened to the region was in 2014, when the radical group of the Islamic State announced itself to be the caliphate of all Muslims, and they settled in Raqqa, in my city. I'm originally from that city, and started destroying the cultural heritage there. Of course, after the destruction, the Islamic State in 2014 started giving permission to people to excavate archaeological sites in exchange of 20% of the results, and then they developed their own excavations in archaeological sites. All participants of the conflict had their negative contribution to the cultural heritage, including, for example, the Syrian army or the Free Syrian army, the radical people, the radical groups, or the Kurdish militants. We know also that heritage is part of the one's identity. And what we want to do is to protect the identity and help in preparing the future. I would like to mention some, quickly, very shortly, some local and international initiatives to safeguard the heritage in Syria and Iraq, starting with the DGM, the Director General of Antiquities and Museums, is the official authority in Syria, responsible for protecting the cultural heritage. Many international efforts also dedicated to protecting heritage, including, for example, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, ESOR, American Schools of Oriental Research, the Institute of Archaeology in Oxford. They have been working on documentation and the assessment of the damage on cultural heritage. And recently, for example, Oxford University developed reconstruction of 3D modeling of one of Palmyra's monuments, and it was exposed in Trafalgar Square in London, and after that it was exposed in New York. I don't know if it arrived to New York or not yet, but it's very possible. And this was considered as an act of defiance for the radical people, and that reconstruction, the destroyed heritage, is possible using the new technologies. I would like to present you my proposal, research proposal. It was presented to Swedish Bank. The background of the research was documentation project I realized before in 2014, 2015 in the University of Santiago de Compostela in Spain. in the 3 Syrian provinces, Hasaka, Deir ez-Zor, and Raqqa. I could document 177 archaeological sites which suffered all kind of illegal excavations, vandalism, iconoclastic, or looting. The results are published on the UNESCO website on the Observatory of Syrian Cultural Heritage, and you can find it, but it's in Spanish since the research was developed in Spain. And at that time, the number of damaged sites in Syria formed almost, included in my research, included 1/3 of the entire destroyed sites. Of course, after that date, after 2015, the Islamic State expanded its territory to include areas after Raqqa, Deir ez-Zor, Hasaka, and included the province of Aleppo to the west, the province of Homs, and the northern part of Iraq. So it's necessary now to update the research done already in this region 3 years ago, because many things happened after that date, and then include new areas in Syria and in Iraq. The aim of this project is not only documentation and assessment of the damage or raise awareness, but it's also reconstruction of heritage and studying the relationship between cultural heritage, public, and the society. And also it will target modern conflict and archaeology and how conflict has influenced the society, the material culture, and the landscape. And finally, the project will address the memory, construction, and commemoration of the conflict, and how we can use heritage for healing the societies which suffered this socio-political rupture after the armed conflict. Of course, due to security reasons, the research will rely on satellite images, information provided by colleagues inside in Syria and in Iraq, data published by the Islamic State, for example, and the information available on social media, because many of activists are publishing and documenting and then share the information on social media. We will study also the geographic information in order to predict which sites could be targeted by the radical groups, and in this case we can prioritize them for 3D reconstruction, for example. This information should be included in the research, in the catalog, we can say. The most important information, the archaeological excavations or surveys, which university, references and bibliography, what happened and when happened, and source of information, also map and available images of the damage. So it will be updating this part, including Syria, the province of Homs, and the province of Aleppo, beside Raqqa, Deir ez-Zor, and Hasaka, and the northern part of Iraq, to include all the territory occupied by the Islamic State. To conclude, the main priorities now is spread knowledge and raise awareness about the importance of heritage, the relationship between heritage and identity, and the relationship between illicit trafficking in antiquities and terrorism. We need to publish reports and share databases to thwart any intention to sell the past and destroy it. We need to prepare programs for specialists, for archaeologists, curators, collectors, and programs directed to the general public. And we need to develop more strategies, address the issue of illicit trafficking in antiquities, considering all participants in this process, not just the seller or the smuggler, but also include the people who buy antiquities, studying the traffic routes and trying to control them, provenance, investigations also for objects exposed in museums, and restitution and repatriation, and also realize some update for European and international legislations, like for example the German initiative in 2016. Also intensify security measures in museums here in Europe and learn from the experience, prepare good documentation and 3D modeling for these for our museums here in Europe. And most importantly, concentrate on education, because our fight is not against radical people, our fight is against radical ideology. And I think SAR, by the supporting researchers and experts, is doing the right thing to protect heritage, because education is the only thing that radical people are afraid of. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Anas, for presenting us this very important and interesting project. Also, I guess very ambitious, but I think there will be a lot of questions because it's really of interest for many of the colleagues here. Yeah, Dr. Tuba, would you like to present your project?
Thank you very much for giving the stage to us to introduce our initiative. First, I would like to start with saying that I'm not alone here. We are a huge team. So we have friends here, and they will now share you a guide like this, which includes our information, contact information, and also short information about the initiative. And because the presentation will be just 7 minutes, and also you guys, they can also answer whatever you want to ask in the coffee break. So I would like to start with who we are. Of University is founded to create new and emancipative opportunities for education and research. And it's established for, and it's an online digital platform and established for and by academics from Turkey, yet addresses itself to academics to all over the world. Academics who have been purged from their institutions, who have been legally or politically persecuted, or who have been dismissed like us. So to say, in other words, scholars at risk, I mean. What was the impetus or what motivated us to take this initiative was, first, it was a reaction. It was a reaction on what was going on, what's happening in our homeland, in our country. So there were too many thousands of purged academics from their institutions in our country. And also regarding the students, they lost their chance to access critical knowledge because the universities lost their colorness, and also students have now lack of access to critical knowledge in most of the universities in Turkey. And also we were not alone, and also the students were not alone, because there are too many students who has lost in the war geography to reach and to finish their university education. So this was the reaction, first a reaction to all what was happening there. And it was also a proactive action on what is coming here, what's waiting for us. It's very obvious that the number will be increasing on the upcoming years and next years. And it was obvious that the increasing numbers of persecuted or dismissed academics will be increased. And also it was obvious to us that German academia, regarding the German academia, and for our career development, we need to find some long-term solutions, because now we have some scholarships and most of us have some scholarship. But regarding the long-term period and our career development, we needed a long-term solution. And also, what makes us competitive in German academia is our knowledge on our country. And now, regarding the problem and the crisis in the country, that we cannot enter the country, actually our knowledge is devaluated. So it was an option for us. And on the other hand, we saw some opportunities in the German academia for e-learning platforms. So on the other hand, there are too many other scholars in Turkey. They are stuck in the country, lost their passports, and they're not able to travel to other countries, and they lost their chance to reach their students, and even their universities, they're banned to enter university campuses. So it was another kind of a solution for that. So we needed to support the ones still existing in the country and struggling for the democracy in the country. So I will come back to this because this is, on the other hand, our challenge in the initiative. Then this was our limitations, and then we found out that, or just noticed that, technology did a revolution. No borders, no nations, no passports, no residency permit problems anymore. So we seen that technology did a revolution, and we have this online platform. If we have this online platform, we will have more opportunity. And also regarding this German academia and German bureaucracy still resisting to e-learning platforms and education system compared with US. Then we founded our initiative in May 2017 with a founding assembly. We had 25 founding members, and we became as an association since then. It's an IFA in Germany, which means a non-profit organization. And then our first launchment activity was an online conference. It was the first thing we did. We launched ourselves with a conference. The name of the conference was Tough Questions on Peace. And it has been a great success for us, more than we expected, actually. We did a crowdfunding to actualize this crowdfunding project to actualize this conference, and also we received some funds from German foundations. It was a success because we had 10,000 unique visitors to the online conference. And then we had a workshop in Kazal among all the members, and for just creating a common knowledge on e-learning, because it's really new for many of us. And then now we started with three different German cities, with three different universities, online lectures, which is one is in Potsdam University, one is getting prepared in Munich University, and one is in Osnabrück. And I would like to go on with who do we target as a target audience? Who is our target audience? I think I mentioned the academic side, scholars at risk, of course. But regarding the students, we believe in education as a basic right that needs to be free of charge. So enrolling as a student is not subject to any conditions and fees. So this makes kind of our distinguishing character from other e-learning platforms. And regarding these differences from other platforms, I would like to say there is no restrictions for the language in our platform. So we promise to provide a multilingual format, and also what we are doing now and up to now is we provide information and the courses in English, German, and Turkish subtitles. And the other thing is that differs us from others. We try to keep anonymity of the students regarding the security reasons, especially in our country, in Turkey. So we promise anonymity, so students do not have to give their real names. So it's another option for them. And And also, we have a workspace. It's for research, so it's not just an education lecture platform, actually, not just for courses. And this workspace provides scholars and learners. We use learners instead of students, with the technical and social means of participating in collaborative education and research. And the digital platform also allows collaborative research projects. And also, the last, but not the least thing is, we have teaching tandems. This is another distinguishing character of university. University establishes teaching tandems between universities and scholars at risk, independent of national borders and repressive regimes. Scholars are again reconnected to their university and maybe through the university, and continue to work with their students, which is an essential character of academic life. And last but not least, what do we expect from institutions, or how can you support us? First, our mission rests on a commitment to peace in the world and living together in diversity, and also it therefore seeks to develop education and research in a less hierarchical and more democratic ways. So every individuals or institutions who advocates peace as a universal value can support the Off University platform through academic or financial means, or just by spreading our word. And also, we need some motivation and some new ideas to find solutions to our challenge, because the biggest challenge for this initiative was, now we have people and we don't want every scholars just move or come to exile, but there are some people who wants to keep on working in their country, in their homeland, and also there are the democratic forces there, they still exist there. So we have to find solutions to just let them and somehow fund them to keep on their working. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Tuba. I think your project is not less ambitious. It's, I would say, even revolutionary. I guess there will also be a lot of questions about this project, but you have already illustrated with your colleagues and your team that you're sort of creating a small movement. Now we move to the third initiative with Dr. Djemila, to the InZone project.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here on this panel today. It is a pleasure to be here at this Congress, and frankly, to be honest, to be here in Berlin. The city is a bit more exciting than Geneva. So I'm here to present InZone, which is an academic center at the University of Geneva, with the goal of building higher education spaces in fragile context, and more specifically in refugee camps. So our objective is really to build capacity and access to critical thinking in the specific context of refugee camps. InZone started more than 10 years ago as a humanitarian interpreting training or trainers in conflict zone and refugee camps. And step by step, as an academic actor present in those contexts, we realized that there were very, very few opportunities for refugees to access higher education. And so we started working on developing higher education spaces in the refugee camps where we were already present. And when I say education spaces, higher education spaces, I mean both physical spaces and virtual spaces too. More concretely, nowadays we are present in 3 refugee camps, 2 in Kenya, Kakuma and Dadaab, and 1 in Jordan, in Azraq. In both countries, so Jordan and Kenya, we are also collaborating with local universities. They help us adapting our model to the local context, and also building learning pathways for the students. And I will come back to this in a few minutes. We have a very different model from one camp to another. So I will focus on the one in Kakuma in Kenya, because it is the one that I am the most familiar with. So Kakuma is a camp located in the northwest of Kenya, in a very, very remote place. There are around 200,000 refugees there from around 20 different nationalities. Our programs, so the programs of the University of Geneva there in Kakuma, are almost entirely led by management team, only composed of refugee students. So everything there is led by refugees. So the management team is composed of 5 people, and they really supervise everything there, so the day-to-day activities and also the courses. So at the moment we have courses on humanitarian interpreting, history, human rights, children's rights, applied arts, global poverty, global health, and engineering. It means an average of more than 100 students per semester, and also the students are all refugees. On the basis of our experience in the camp, we have developed what we called a learning ecosystem to really have the best model for learning in a refugee camp. So the learning ecosystem is composed of different members. Firstly, you have the management team. I already talked about this. And then you have the students. And usually the students learn in very small class of about 20 students. And for one semester, they have 1 hour of class per week. And this is an online course. So through the MOOCs generally. So 1 hour per week. And then they have group discussion, 1 hour per week too, with an on-site facilitator. Usually this is a former student of the class, and he or she is also a refugee. Then, and this is a new member of the learning ecosystem, you have also an online tutor. Usually this is a person with, he or she can be a master's student or a PhD student located in Geneva. And so they have conversation through Skype and through WhatsApp with the refugee students and with the on-site facilitators on a weekly or on a daily basis very often. And then you have a lecturer located at the University of Geneva, and the lecturer travels for 1 week during the semester, gives a very intense week of class there in the refugee camp, and then supervise the exams. And the students who pass the exams get ECTS credits from the University of Geneva, and also credits from Kenyatta University, so our local partner in Kenya. We also try to build learning pathways for our students in the camp, so that they can use the knowledge that they acquire with the InZone program. We try to have pathway both in the host country and also in Geneva. So one example is for the opportunity for 15 students per year to apply to a bachelor degree in international relations and diplomacy at Kenyatta University. So they follow part of the courses in the camp, and then they can travel to Nairobi to continue their learning pathway. Another opportunity for the students who cannot leave the camp, so most of the students, they can accumulate InZone courses and then obtain a certificate of open studies from the University of Geneva. Besides this blended model of education, we also develop more practical courses notably in global health, engineering and human rights. And I will talk a bit on the programs on human rights because I'm leading this program for InZone. So we have an advanced course on human rights that I launched at the request of the students there. And the objective of this course is really to try to find practical solutions to the human rights issues in the camp. So the students identify a variety of problems and then they build small projects to respond to those issues. It can be access to services for refugees with disabilities in the camp, or access to higher education for women in the camp. One example that will be launched next year is a course for elders of the different community so that they can learn about the basics of Kenyan law and human rights, because in the camps they are really the first mechanism of justice. And this training will be led by the refugee students in the camp with the help of students from the University of Geneva and from Kenyatta University as well. And my last point is on research. We also try to develop research in collaboration with refugee students in the camp. So currently, to give you just one example, I'm writing an article in co-author with a refugee student on the different legal documents organizing the refugee camp of Kakuma. So this is another way of developing the capacities of the refugee students and the refugee academics there on site.
Thank you very much, Dr. Djemila. I think all the three projects are of extreme interest that I don't even know where to start with my question. I just have some sort of common observations to share with you. Probably the first one is that the local context really counts for the emergence of these initiatives, if it's about cultural heritage in Syria and Iraq, if it's the political context in Turkey, or if it's creating a new how did you call it, learning ecosystem in refugee camps. I think the second observation is that online instruments are very important for all the three projects. They are, and what we can see that even under this very difficult circumstances you were all in, or you are still in touch with, let's say, there are new forms of knowledge production and knowledge transmission emerging. So you have obviously told us a little bit the success stories of your different projects. One common question to all of you would be, where are the challenges you are facing? Where did you see problems? If you have maybe very concrete examples to tell us, and where do you think could we also support you? This would be a common question, but I would like to open the floor also, and we have like only 15 minutes for the discussion. I would like to open the floor already for questions, taking always 3 together, and then we make 2 rounds of answers, I would suggest. So please.
Thank you. This is Jimona from Cameroon. I have a question on the refugee camps in Kenya that you talk about. How do you manage it, and how do the government support, the Kenyan government support you? Because I've had time working with in Cameroon, where in the north, the Boko Haram don't want children to go to school, and we try to have school for the refugees there, but very impossible. And then even now, the west part of Cameroon, they are all moving to Nigeria, and it's actually very difficult to create something like that. Can you also extend it to country like that, like Cameroon? I would be very happy.
Thank you very much for the speakers. Really very interesting what you shared with us. My question for Mr. Khabour, Anas, I would like just to mention something, that when you talk about the project, risking the cultural heritage, actually this is one of the main problems in many of the countries at risk, specifically with the extremists. I would refer to Yemen and Libya and Iraq. My question is why you didn't include Yemen, which is now under really severe threat through this cultural heritage. This is just for clarification. Maybe if you could just put some ideas on this. The second question for Djemila. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. But again, dealing with camps in some countries, like Jordan, you identify 2 camps, one in Jordan and one in Kenya. First, how you manage with the infrastructure. I mean, the tools, because from my own experience, when I tried to conduct some of my for my own research back to Libya, sometimes one interview, it take me 3 days to manage this because of this power cut or, disconnection with the internet, or, I mean, I wonder how you manage to deal with this. I mean, this is ideally, but the reality is more than that. The other question, you mentioned that 20 nationalities. Means that even does include some Syrian, if you could just give some more information. And the third point, it's what about a gender perspective from all these projects? I mean, if I realize that this is the gender perspective is missing from the whole Congress. We are treated equally, I think, without any kind of gender sensitivity. So if you could just elaborate on this point, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I will keep my question short. It goes to Tuba, İnal, Çekiç, and I would like to ask how we can contribute into this project in terms of, could you please expand a bit more on tandem teaching and the way how, for instance, I'm working at the Bremen University as a Philip Schwartz colleague, scholar, and can I make a course which could be considered as part of your program, and to what extent it's recognized, it can be officially recognized, both in respect to students, but also in respect to those who are going to teach from abroad and from Germany. Thank you.
So thank you for all your questions. It gives me the opportunity to really talk about the different challenges that we meet in the context of a refugee camp. Regarding the relationship, partnership, collaboration with the different governments in the countries in which we are operating. We have agreements with the Kenyan government and with the Jordan government to be in the camp. We also have agreements with the UNHCR, who is the international organizations managing the 3 camps in which we are. That being said, it's not because we have agreement that everything runs very smoothly. And this is one of the challenge, because we are operating in a humanitarian context, and there is a lot of dependencies in such a context. The system works on dependencies, and what we are trying to do is to build critical thinking in such an environment. So as you can guess, sometimes we have difficulties in understanding each other, and so we always have to argue, to fight, to find our own way, and to keep higher education, and not only vocational training in a refugee camp. Infrastructures. So the infrastructures are very different in Jordan and in Kenya. And even in Kenya, they are different in the two camps. The infrastructure is much better in Jordan, where we have Wi-Fi, we have access to internet, so it's not difficult to have online courses, for instance. It's much more difficult to get into the camp, to get the authorizations, etc. But for infrastructure, it's okay. So we have computers, screens, everything on that matter. In Kenya, it's much more complicated. It's very difficult to have internet. So we built solar power, solar energy for our computers there. And this is a challenge on a daily basis. So we really tend to train refugee students with a specific education in IT, and they help us there because they have the knowledge from the specific context. The nationalities in the camp of Kakuma in Jordan, we have in Azwaq there are only Syrians. In Kenya, in Dadaab, there are almost only Somalians. And in Kakuma, 20 different nationalities. So it can be from South Sudan, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Democratic Republic of Congo, Uganda, etc. So there are many, many different nationalities, and they are organized by nationalities. So this is something also interesting, because then you can have potential conflicts also between nationalities in the camp, because sometimes you're there from South Sudan and you have to share your house with someone from Sudan, and this is precisely the reason why you are in the refugee camp. Then gender perspectives. Well, we try to be very sensitive to this in our approach in different way. It is very, very difficult to have female students in refugee camps. So for instance, last year we had applications for the human rights course, 50 applications, 2 women. So I'm supposed to give a class on human rights with only male class. So that was really a challenge to me. So what we tend to do is to have nurseries for the children, because very often women don't come to class because they have to be with the children. And we also try to delocalize the courses not far away from the women live, because one of the most dangerous things in refugee camp for women is transportations. So that's something we tend to do. And I'm also thinking about building only female classes, because I know that it will be easier for women to speak and to learn in an environment only for women. And we will try maybe to do the same thing in Jordan, although the gender issues are completely different in one camp and in another. I also try to focus on LGBTIQ issues in the refugee camp. This is a hard topic in refugee camps. Also when you are, for instance, in Kenya, where it is a crime to have sexual relations with someone from the same sex. So we are in an international environment protected by the UNHCR, but at the same time we are in Kenya and we have to obey the law of the country. So this is a very tricky situation. Also, there are a lot of refugees coming from Uganda in the refugee camp of Kakuma, and they are in Uganda precisely because they face persecutions on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity in Uganda. So we tend to take all of this into consideration, and we will see if it's possible to build also LGBTIQ projects in the camps. I was a bit long, sorry.
Thank you. As to your question about why Yemen is not included, the damage to the cultural heritage in Yemen is really serious. And recently, I think in last August or September, the Ministry for Foreign Affairs in the United States launched a new initiative dedicated to protect the cultural heritage in Yemen. For my specific case, my area of expertise is Mesopotamia, but I am of course open to collaborate with the Yemeni colleagues, and this Congress was really a great opportunity to network and have contact with other colleagues. So I talked with two Yemeni colleagues, and they will connect me to archaeologists in Yemen. And it's possible to develop joint research also with them. Shortly, as to the difficulties I faced for develop the research was the Swedish archaeology is in general interested in Nordic archaeology or Scandinavian archaeology or Viking Age archaeology. So bring the issue of Syria to the table with the Swedish authorities was not easy. But my stay as a SAR scholar at Gothenburg University helped me a lot. And Sarina and Carolina know all the details about this. And I could create good networks of professors, of Swedish students interested, who became interested in the question of Syrian and Iraqi heritage. And we could thank to this initiative, we could develop this research project. And on the other hand, SAR also increased my eligibility to apply for research projects. Since I have been educated in Swedish universities, in Gothenburg University, get pedagogy courses, and almost get my promotion to be associate professor very soon. That will increase my possibility to not just to do research, but also to lead research groups. So that was thanks to SAR support in this case.
Thank you for the questions. I will try to answer both questions, challenges, and how to contribute to the lectures. This is kind of a challenge. So we don't have just one recipe for all universities, because it's all case-based. Every university just proceed in different ways. So, but actually, if you're a scholar at risk, or anyone who wants to contribute in a university based in Germany, or in a university opening a lecture which is accredited, I mean have ECTS credits, you just go to your university. It also differs university to university, in some cases to the rectorate, in some cases just IT department, in some cases the department chair. So we face all these problems and we solve all these differences in different universities to ask them how to give an online lecture. And then the lecture will take place in our online platform, and before preparing your lecture, we recommend to find a tandem partner from Turkey. Since you are from Turkey or somewhere else who is at risk in the country, cannot leave the country and cannot fund themselves, because we have many friends who are stuck in the country, cannot leave, don't have passports, and even because of this dismissal of emergency decrees, they are not allowed to find a job in the country. So this is their just option to meet their students again, or some students again. So to find a tandem partner from your country and prepare the lecture together. Then you have your university, you open a lecture which is accredited, and then you invite another lecturer, which is tandem. Then in some cases, this is another challenge. Funding who is already cannot leave the country is another challenge that we are facing. But we solved it. In Potsdam University, for instance, they solved this problem. We opened a lecture. The lecture is given by one of our friends and scholars. He's also a signatory here, but living here since years. And we have a tandem partner in Turkey, in Ankara. And the tandem partner, He is paid here in the university, Potsdam University, and for the tandem partner in Ankara, she is also paid by the University, Potsdam University. So, but in some other cases, maybe we should fund, this is our responsibility, maybe to find some funds for people who live in the country. So there is no just one recipe, we have to just dig and find.
Yeah, thank you very much. Our time is already over. Unfortunately, I think we could continue discussing. Of course, there will be the opportunity to continue the discussion outside of the room. I think these were three very ambitious but also very interesting and fascinating initiatives which you three presented. Thank you very much for your interesting presentations, for participating in this panel, and also for the plenary to ask questions and to participate in the discussion. I think we managed at the end of this day to present you some success stories on the one hand, and to present you also three extremely innovative ideas in terms of knowledge transmission and education, and I think this could be the theme also for the future. Thank you very much.